DeepMind is really on the quest to solve difficult mathematical problems. And I think, to me, that's really exciting because what they're trying to do is sort of combining recursiveness and iteration, which I think is really the foundation of intelligence. But this is philosophical. I'm going to try to talk about this. I'm going to discuss the paper now. Just as a preliminary, I got inspired by Yannick's video on this paper. So if you want a detailed technical discussion, go to Yannick's video. Just do a search for Yannick and then find the name of the paper is Solving Olympiad Geometry Without Human Demonstration. He does a pretty good job explaining the paper. What I want to do is also explain a little bit about the paper, but more philosophically, I think sort of combine this paper with my experience at NeurIPS, with FunSearch, which was a paper that they presented, and the concept of finding recursively solutions for mathematical problems, because I think, to me, this is sort of an avenue that I'm pretty sure the computer science community as a whole is taking very seriously, but I just feel like it's almost underappreciated how crucial this is, how amazing the idea is and the potential. So that's why I'm discussing this paper. Before I go there, real quick, also, just to be clear, this is not a NeurIPS paper, so this is also not part of the series of AI and robotics or any of that stuff. It's just a simple conversation about the idea of using recursiveness and iteration as a path towards solving pretty intelligent problems. And maybe that is actually intelligence. This is not even wrong podcast. It's January 22nd, 2024. This is Crim Delco. For the day, the fund is down 1%. The market's up 40 basis points for the year. We are down 12.2. The market is up 2. We're underperforming about 14.2%. Tesla keeps underperforming. The earnings date is coming up in 2 days. The news flow is, I would say, it's not unusually negative for Tesla. It's certainly not positive, but you have, not able to charge in Chicago. Dave Grohl saying that the most stupid car he ever bought was Tesla. That was a few months ago, but still, I just saw this today. I mean, things like that don't help. Whether he said that for real or whether he said that because his liberal mindset sort of coincides with him owning the car of Elon Musk, I don't know. Only he can answer that. But I think the real serious threat, in my opinion, is really China here. We have to deal with China. And the Chinese electric car manufacturers are down 30 to 40% year to date. So there's a real slump in China, not just in the car manufacturing space, but certainly there more than elsewhere. So we have issues like that, and it just doesn't help. For lack of a better word, it just doesn't help. And I think we're looking at a tough, probably couple of quarters because also Europe is just not delivering. I spoke about this. The Germans have found a way to slow down electric car sales, whether that's coincidental or not, or orchestrated or whatever. Honestly, doesn't really matter. What matters for us is two things: volume and margins. And on that front, Tesla's not looking good. Now, whenever we are in a situation like that, I think it's good to kind of know where we stand. We're pretty good with our leverage, so that's not the problem on our front. We have, we're below target leverage, so we can definitely take some more drawdowns. I think that's okay. Where we see more problems is on the sort of, long-term trajectory for Tesla. I guess we're going to have to see, volume, a concatenation of volume growth and margins, and that's being pushed out. So that's, I think, the fundamental reason why the stock is underperforming. At Orange Capital Partners, we have certainly raised the question of diversification. We have raised the question of, reducing our Tesla position. The reason we're not doing that is really because we're really excited about our embodied decision-making agents. I mean, this is our thesis, and whether Tesla is really good at it or whether Tesla is maybe not the leader or the leader, that remains to be seen. But they are working on it. they're in it. And sometimes when you run a fund like this, and the purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund. So this is a perfect example. Like, you have to make decisions. You stay around, even though you know that in the short run, there's just not a lot of good news to be expected. Now, the best thing to do is sort of a good and bad table. So the bad table, I think we've already listed. We have China, we have Europe, we have margin pressure, price pressure. We have some negative news flow. That's sort of on the negative side. What's positive? Positive is we have, we're in the business of developing embodied decision-making agents. We have a base to build a foundation model. We're basically exactly where the science. If you could do a Venn diagram maybe, where you take science, you take technology, and then you take business, right? And where you want to be is where all these circles sort of overlap. And there's a very high chance that the circles for Tesla overlap. So we have the science. The science is, we have this foundational shift away from dedicated, task-specific machine learning applications towards general foundation models that can be used in multimodal sense for embodied decision-making agents, whether it's self-driving cars or humanoid robots. Actually doesn't matter that much. So this is the science. The technology is, there is ample evidence that technology is actually jumping on that bandwagon. So this is not just a scientific project. This is real technology being applied. And now on the business side, the question is, okay, how can this be monetized? And that's where Tesla is a bit struggling on the self-driving side and on the humanoid side. Once that kicks in, of course, we see a massive re-rating of the stock, and that's what we're waiting for. And it's very hard to time this, so that's why we're still in the stock. We are also in the stock, of course, because the decarbonization of energy, the decarbonization of the economy, I mean, these themes are still there. Maybe they're not on top of people's heads right now, but they're still there, and Tesla is the leader. So now let's talk about this paper, switching gears here. DeepMind is really doing very interesting work, in our opinion, and their approach towards intelligence, in a nutshell, is iteration and recursiveness. And those things are, of course, intertwined. But what I mean by that is that they're not just trying to, let's say, they're not using an OpenAI approach. Okay, just train trillions of parameters, sort of compress everything into a knowledge base, and then extract knowledge through prompts. They're doing it more iteratively. And what that means is, let's say, in this particular case, they've built a math computer or a computational math engine which solves math problems in a computational way. What does that mean? It means that there's no explicit knowledge being either programmed into the computer, nor is it being stored in some sort of memory. There's no explicit knowledge being stored. What's being stored are processes. And these processes are concatenated in a way that they lead towards solutions. So for example, what they're doing here in this particular paper is finding proofs for mathematical problems. The problems are relatively simple. The problem space is kept relatively simple for obvious reasons that I'm going to discuss in a second. So there's a certain problem space, let's call it S, or let's call it P, and the problem space consists of geometric problems, Euclidean geometry. So you have a triangle, you need to prove that certain angles are similar or certain tangents, if you draw a circle around certain sides of the triangles, are similar, that sort of stuff. And how do you prove that? So what they're doing is the following. They have a list of what they call transitions. So that just means that I give you a triangle and I ask prove X, Y, Z. And what they're doing now is they have a list of maybe 50 things that you can do. And the way mathematical proofs work in general, people have done this, and I think everybody's done probably, at least if you've done any kind of engineering stuff in undergrad, you've probably seen how mathematical proofs work. I would say even advanced AP classes in high school have that, where you take, let's say, a triangle and you do things with it. Like you draw a circle, you turn this triangle into two triangles with a right angle somewhere. You draw a circle around the triangle. You found relationships between the tangents. Like you just do certain things. Those are the transitions. And what they do in this paper is they just do randomly a bunch of things, and then from there they recursively go back and see, okay, if I've done all this stuff, and now are there things I can deduct from there? So meaning, I've drawn the circle, I've done the right angle. Now let's see what are the relationships. Oh, there's a right relationship in this angle and that angle. There's a relationship in the tangent. So I sort of list all the possible things that they can be deducted from this particular iteration that I have. And then iteratively, if I do all this and I still don't have an answer to my proof, I then iterate again with new transitions. I then deduct knowledge from there, see if I can prove. You see where this is going. Like if you did this without any kind of knowledge as a 16, 17-year-old high school student, you just wouldn't get a good grade because you don't have the time to do all these iterations, not in the 45 minutes that you've given for a math test, and forget about SAT, right, where you have 2 minutes per task. However, if you have a certain amount of time and a huge amount of compute power, and you can iterate billions of times. In fact, time is not even, that doesn't matter. All that matters is the iteration. So you can try this, and this, and this, and see what kind of knowledge you get from there. You can try this, and this, and you keep trying and trying and trying, and you know what? Lo and behold, at some point you get a solution. So this is what they did. And this is what reminds me of FunSearch. That's why I want to transition out of FunSearch and then sort of generalize my statement here, which is what FunSearch, the paper that they presented at NeurIPS, was allegedly doing is the same thing. You know, they called it, we do a search in function space, that kind of thing. What that really means is actually the same thing, right? A search in function space means you come up with random functions, and then you sort of backward, recursively go back and see, okay, can those functions solve the problem that I have? And that brings me to the core of my argument, which is that it seems to me that, at least from a perspective of DeepMind, intelligence is recursive iteration. So what DeepMind is doing is iterate around problems at scale, so many, many times, and then, whenever you have a certain set of, let's say in this case, potential, situations in a triangle or in a circle, then you recursively go back and see, okay, can the relationships that I now created, can they be used to solve my problem? This is very similar to FunSearch. So I think what I'm trying to say here is that I find this iterative approach towards decision making, whether it's in mathematics, whether it's in general function search like in FunSearch, or whether it's in decision-making agents that are based on reinforcement learning and all that stuff, it's all the same thing, right? So I think that's why I'm so excited about reinforcement learning. Not necessarily, it doesn't really matter what you call it, but let's just call it reinforcement learning for now, because the iterative approach of reinforcement learning has a very similar sort of flavor to it, right? The Q learning, where you try to update a policy based on the expected value that you get from if you use this policy, and then keep doing the same thing going forward. So you update the policy, and then you sort of recursively see whether that will give you the highest value, and if not, you try something else, and you keep going. To me, this is, in a sense, it's the same thing, and I think that's why, look, DeepMind, they put themselves on the map with the Atari paper, which was based on Q-learning, an iterative approach to solutions. Now they're doing all this mathematical stuff, this function math sort of space. They live in that world, and to me, that is, it's the same. Again, it's the same flavor. And I think if you think about it more generally. Let's say you bring in somebody like David Deutsch, right, in a conversation with Brad Hall and Naval Ravikant recently. Do we have intelligence? We don't have intelligence. What is intelligence? Deutsch kind of dismissive. I find this conversation a bit tiring, to be honest, because who cares what intelligence is, right? What matters is which processes lead towards solutions. And I think, DeepMind has the right approach. I think DeepMind is the only company that I personally think is as interesting. I shouldn't say that. It's almost as interesting as Tesla, because Tesla is more interesting simply because they're doing it in the embodied world. And to me, anybody who, recently we had a statement by Jan LeCun saying something like, "Oh, we're the only company that's doing real AI," or any of that. I mean, it's ridiculous, because if you're not doing embodied intelligence, you're not even doing anything with intelligence. That's not intelligence. That's something else. But that's anyway. I think embodied intelligence is really where it's at. But I feel like the DeepMind approach is, to me, this is the path towards intelligence. And I mentioned David Deutsch in this conversation. I don't think we need to discuss, if this olympiad, math computer doesn't really understand what it's doing, who cares? It's coming up with solutions to a mathematical proof. I just started watching Good Will Hunting. You have this Matt Damon character. He's, a thug on the street, but he solves problems, and he's interesting to a professor at MIT for that particular reason. And who cares how he gets there? Who cares what he actually knows? I mean, the movie depicts him as a bookish reader, super intelligent person that can connect between art and science and history and math. Fine, if that's what we humans perceive as intelligence, good for him. But there's a scene in the movie, I've only seen 1/3 of the movie, but there's a scene that I've paid attention to, which is where he reads very fast. So there you go, right? Reading fast, what does that mean? That means you have to iterate fast. No matter how you splice it and dice it, no matter what intelligence means for you, it has to do with rapid iteration. That's one thing it definitely has to have. You're not going to get any kind of intelligence without rapid iteration. Whether it's in the arts, in the music, and whether that iteration happens in your brain, and you're one of those people that writes a book every 5 years and the book is a bestseller, or whether you're sort of Jackson Pollock creating and creating and creating, doesn't really matter. Okay, that's the thing. It's the computation happens, whether it happens in the brain and you're doing it sort of in brain space, and then you're doing it in the real space. That's as long as you iterate fast, and then you have to find a way to recursively improve. This is at the core of most of the papers that I've been discussing recently, whether it's NeurIPS, whether it's stuff that I picked up like this, whether it's my new series, Foundation Models for Decision-Making Agents. It's all about iteration and finding a way to recursively go back and improve policies, or improve, path towards solutions, if you will. Let's just call it policies. So we iterate forward, we try, we throw things, we literally throw shit at the wall, and then we try to see, okay, what sticks? And then we take the stick back, update our policy, and go forward. So this is why, to me, this paper is really interesting, and I'm happy Yannick picked it out. Again, if you want a more technical conversation about how they did it and what they left out, I mentioned they left out. So, of course, we're in the early days here of generally solving these types of problems. So the problem space is being held, limited, which is okay. I think it's perfectly fine to limit the problem space, because we're still in the proof of concepts, situation here. We're not ready yet to go and solve the Riemann hypothesis, but this is definitely a path towards that kind of problem.